Stakeholder mapping. Stakeholders have influence and interest on the project. Failure to recognize and manage these stakeholders can result in an increase in the resistance or lack of support to the project. The bigger the project, the more stakeholders are there to manage. But all stakeholders are not the same. Their levels of interest and influence vary. The project leader needs to have a good understanding of these levels and manage the relationships with each group of stakeholders accordingly. Grouping stakeholders in categories will facilitate the development of communication and strategies to build and maintain relationships that are more effective. A common tool used to map stakeholders is the Power and Interest Stakeholder Matrix. The matrix is used to classify all project stakeholders based on their level of power and interest in the project, creating four distinct categories of stakeholders. Each category will have a unique strategy to manage the relationships. Stakeholder influence or power is the degree by which a stakeholder can influence the outcomes or results of a project. Identification of stakeholders includes the level of influence, high or low, and the type of influence they have on the project. For example, influence over resources, approvals, participation, and even influence over other stakeholders. Early identification of stakeholders' interests is important if the project leader wants to involve them in a participatory process. By understanding their areas of interest, the project leader can identify how they can contribute to the project goals. The type of interest may vary. They might have interest in the outputs, outcomes, and results of the project, interest in the knowledge the project will generate, and interest in participating. The strategy is to increase their levels of interest. The more involved they are in the project, the stronger their interest and support will be. A simple stakeholder register can be used to capture and analyze this information. The process is a team effort. The analysis is objective and based on the information the team has at the moment. This register can be used to track how the levels of influence and interest change in the various stakeholders over the life of the project, keeping in mind that this information is not public and should be kept as confidential and only for the use of the project team. Most of the methods of stakeholder mapping use a 2 by 2 matrix or grid that divides stakeholders into four groups, each for one space in the matrix. The vertical axis represents the levels of influence, low at the bottom and high at the top. The levels of interest runs across the horizontal axis, low at the left and high on the right side of the grid. In this grid, each quadrant represents a stakeholder group that has different levels of interest and influence in the project. These four groups are promoters with high interest and high influence, leaders with high influence but low interest, defenders with low influence but high interest, and apathetics or indifferents with low interest and low influence. Each group will require a different relationship strategy. This classification also helps identify the group of stakeholders that need more attention and the level of direct engagement and role that each stakeholder might have in the project. The grid can have many variations, depending on the needs of the project and the focus of the organization. For example, the PMI also uses a 2 by 2 grid that classifies stakeholders by interest and power and how to manage the directions with each group. Manage closely, keep satisfied, keep informed, and monitor with minimal effort. This matrix is also known as the Stakeholder Mendeley model. Promoters. These are the stakeholders that have a high degree of influence on the project and who also have high interest for its success. This implies that the project leader will need to construct good working relationships with these stakeholders. This to ensure an effective coalition of support for the project. Examples may be the project donors and senior management. Their roles are to act as promoters of the project, using their influence to speak on behalf of the project. The strategy for managing relationships with this group is to build partnerships and collaborations. Stakeholders with high influence but low interest are called latents. They have no particular interest or involvement in the project, but have the power to influence it greatly if they become interested. For example, a government office may not have the information to become interested in the project, but their involvement may be critical for the project's success, such as access to resources the project will need. The strategy is to increase their interest in the project by convincing them that the effort is also important to their own interests. Stakeholders in this quadrant are called defenders. They have a vested interest and can voice their support in the community, but have little actual power to influence the effort in any way. The strategy with this group is to keep them communicated and find opportunities for them to have some involvement in the project. The goal is to keep their interest in the project. For example, some communities that are important for the project have high interest but low capacity or a limited voice to influence the project outcomes. Apathetics are those stakeholders with low interest and low influence. These stakeholders simply don't care about the project one way or the other. They may be stakeholders only through their position in the community. The project may in fact have little or no impact on them. The strategy with this group is to keep them occasionally informed. This is the group with the lowest priority for the project leader. For example, a local NGO that also works in the same area of the project but with a different focus. Another application of this map is to identify the influences that exist amongst stakeholders. Stakeholders also have some influence on other stakeholders, and that information can be valuable for the project leader. In some cases, the project leader may not have a direct access to a key stakeholder, but by using the influence map, he can identify those stakeholders that can help him approach other stakeholders that are difficult to reach. For example, a partner may have better relationship with a government office, and that is an opportunity to influence a stakeholder that maybe have low interest in the project. The darker color of the arrow, the stronger is the level of influence.